Valerie James, the chairman of the District 21 Republican Party. We're partnering with your district representatives to have a community town hall. And I thank all of our local Republican volunteers out here who are helping staff the event and make this possible. I hope all of you got an agenda at the front when you came in. And I've asked one of our volunteers, Travis Jensen, to give an opening invocation. Travis, if you come to the front.
Our Father in heaven, we are thankful for the opportunity that we have to be gathered together this evening. We're thankful for the opportunity that we have to be in this great community here in Meridian. We are thankful for this country and thankful for the Constitution that allows us the freedoms that we have. We pray that Thou would bless us and bless us with Thy Spirit this evening, that we might be able to have civil discourse and be able to learn from each other and ask the questions that are pertinent to ourselves and those around us. And we pray for these things, Father, in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Thank you, Travis. Would you all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? You would rise, face the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, you have the agenda in front of you. I just wanted to go forward, let you know about some of the ground rules. We solicited questions online, and those will be asked by our first moderator, Ms. Casey Johnson, at the end. During that time, we're going to have volunteers pick up your questions from the audience. You'll notice the 3x5 cards in your seats. There's some pens, and once you have your question written, just hold that up. One of our volunteers is going to come by and pick it up and deliver it to the moderators. Our second moderator is Ms. Sydney Plum, and she's going to ask your questions at the second half of the town hall. So we're hoping for some tough and serious questions that are well crafted and respectful. Any questions that are gotcha questions, not a legislative question, or are abusive or not what we're here having this town hall about, and we're not going to ask those questions. We want everybody to participate in a really fair process, have everybody have the opportunity to ask a question and get some answers. And we want this to be a very civil and productive town hall for you tonight. Towards the end of the town hall, the moderator is going to have time to ask some follow-up questions. So if you have something towards the end that you wanted to delve in a little bit more, just fill out another 3x5 card and the volunteer will bring it up. If there's several questions that are broadly on the same topic, the moderator may group those together if they're substantially the same. And we just want the town hall to move along, have as many questions and answers as possible. After we adjourn at 7 p.m., you are welcome to move into the foyer. We have a little bit of time with a couple of the legislators who can stick around for a few minutes to have some private conversation with you. And we also have an exit survey about how we're doing and how we can improve our town hall. If you would meet with I'm looking for Mark Johnson in the back, who's going to have a survey question outside in the foyer, just about how we're doing and how we can improve the town hall for you. With that, I want to introduce our moderators. Our first moderator is going to be Ms. Casey Johnson, and she's from Meridian. She graduated from Meridian High School and has been a frequent volunteer in the community from her time in 4-H and FFA chapters. And she wanted to become more involved in local legislation and politics, and so she volunteered to be a moderator for us in order to continue serving our community. Thank you, Casey. Our second moderator at the second half is Ms. Sydney Plum. She's also from Meridian, and she's a recent graduate from the University of Idaho with a degree in agricultural science, communication, and leadership. She currently works for the Idaho State Department of Agriculture as the agency's public information officer. While public policy has always been interesting to Sydney, it plays a small role in her day-to-day activities in her position at ISDA. Sydney grew up in Meridian, is happy to be back in the Valley, and looks forward to being involved in the community again through events like this. Thank you, Sydney. So please join me in a round of applause for volunteer moderators tonight. I appreciate all the volunteers in the community, so thank you both. Next, I want to introduce our panelists tonight. Panelists, is that the right term? All three are freshman legislators. This is their first term in the Idaho Legislature representing District 21. Senator Treg Brent, Representative James Petzke in Seat A, and Representative Jeff Ehlers in Seat B. Thank you all for coming tonight, the audience, the legislators, and the volunteers. If you would each take a couple of minutes, just two, please, to introduce yourselves, starting with Senator Brent. We'll then move to the questions with Ms. Johnson, and we ask the audience to hold applause or any audible commentary until we adjourn. Thank you. Senator Brent, you have the floor.
Hello, it's working great. First off, I want to say thank you to Valerie, our district chairwoman for District 21. She's our fearless leader, and without her, we would be in disarray for sure, and completely unorganized. So thank you to Valerie for all she does to help us out. Let's give her a round of applause. I thought for sure you'd stand up and bow, Valerie. No bowing? Okay. Also wanted to thank Casey and Sydney as well for being our moderators and all those who are volunteering this evening. My name is Treg Brent. I was elected for my first term in District 21 in the Senate this past fall. I'm a native Idahoan. I'm a small business owner. My wife Tiff is here to support me. She's great, and I'm a family man first. I believe in God and country, and I'm grateful for this opportunity to serve you guys in the Idaho State Senate. I was lucky enough to receive some committee assignments in the Senate, and I'll go over those real quickly. I was appointed as Vice Chair of the State Affairs Committee in the Senate, and in the afternoons on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I was appointed to Local Government Tax. So those are the two committees that I was appointed to. So again, super grateful that you're all here. It shows me that you're engaged, and at the end of the day, no matter if we agree or disagree, that's what's most important. And thank you so much. Here's James.
Yeah, I'll echo the comments. Huge thanks to Valerie and for everybody else involved in putting this on. This is a great opportunity for us to get in front of you guys, especially early in the session. It's going to hopefully give us good feedback going into the session so that we can learn from you what your priorities are as we start voting pretty soon. My name is James Petzke. I represent CA District 21, also my first term, also a small business owner. You'll notice that's a common theme as we go down the line. Also a native Idahoan, and I'm very excited and grateful for the opportunity to serve. So thank you all for that honor. And I also got some pretty decent committee assignments. I was lucky enough to be appointed to the Appropriations Committee, or better known as JFAC. It meets jointly with the Senate to set the state budget. So that actually is the busiest committee by far. It meets for 3 hours every single morning, plus meetings after that in subcommittees. So I told myself after I got that assignment that I wasn't going to work on any policy, and then I somehow ended up with 4 policy bills already. So that's why I was almost late for this event, but got here just in the nick of time. So grateful for the opportunity to serve, and excited to get to work for you guys. So I'll pass it on to Jeff.
Thank you. And again, thank you to Valerie for organizing this and all the volunteers. And thank you all for being here this evening on a Friday night, and those that are joining with us on Facebook. So I'm Jeff Ehlers, also first term in the House. I'm a 6th generation Idahoan. I have a great love for this state and the people here. My wife and I have 4 young kids, 10 and under. It's one of their birthdays tonight, so she's putting off her birthday cake and ice cream until I get home.
So we have 15 minutes.
Also a small business owner. I'm a CPA, involved with a lot of different business activities as well. I really appreciate the assignments of committees that I received for this session. So I'm on the Agriculture Committee. I do have an agriculture background and a long family history of agriculture. And I'm also on the Revenue and Tax Committee. So we're looking at tax policy in the state. And then the third committee I'm on is business, and I'm the vice chair of business committee, the business committee. So looking forward to being with all of you this evening.
Okay, we've got the first pre-submitted questions that we got online, and Casey Johnson, you're up.
Good evening, am I on? Hello. Good evening, everybody. All right. Starting with Senator Brent again. What are your priorities for this legislative session?
First softball question of the evening, I'm very grateful for that one. So, although an important question, so I have a couple different priorities. Number one, property tax reduction. Thankfully, I sit on the committee that deals directly with this right now. Currently, we're waiting for those bills to come over from the House to the Senate. Those bills are appropriated or voted on first in the House. So, really important to me. Number two, we need to figure out education. There's a lot of different bills and a lot of different ideas about what education looks like. I'm sure we'll be discussing these topics this evening. But those are the top two priorities that I came in when I was elected and currently have right now.
Yeah, I'll echo the property tax sentiment for sure. It's certainly a big one in the legislature right now. There's a lot of different ideas floating around. Jeff will probably be the person I can talk to the most since he's on that committee where all those bills are starting. From my perspective, the thing that I talked about a lot in my campaign, and the thing that I would like to see become a bill, is use some sort of, or find some other way to fund school facilities other than bonds. Because if you look at our property tax bills, especially in this area, the main reason why they're so high is because we pay for these bonds for school buildings. And if we can find some other way to fund to fund those school buildings or to pay off those bonds, that's by far the best way, in my opinion, to get property tax relief immediately and effectively, and simultaneously help out with school things. So that would be the way that I would approach that. And you know, for me, digging on appropriations, like I said, that's most of my time will be spent on the budget side, which there's a lot of things there that I'll be working on. And realistically, all tax policy is a shift, right? The only way to actually cut taxes, truly cut taxes, is cut spending. So I'm going to be spending my time there to make sure that all of our tax dollars are spent wisely.
You'll hear similar things from me. Property tax relief is certainly an important agenda item for me, especially being on the Revenue and Tax Committee. We'll get into the details later, I'm sure, with other questions on property tax relief. There's a lot of ideas being floated out there, a lot of things being considered. We're looking to find the best ideas to float to the top for property tax relief. Secondarily, like James was mentioning, education funding, and understanding that a little bit better and how we can improve that. Certainly in where we're at in West Ada and the local schools here, there's a lot of growth, a lot of need in this area, a lot of room for improvement. So looking at those as my top two for this session.
Thank you. All right, so again, to all three of you, starting with Senator Brent, how do you each plan on communicating your votes and thoughts to your constituents?
Another great question. So I think we're all going to do the same thing, but I plan on sending out a newsletter. It was supposed to go out this morning, and by the way, out on the front desk, I have a sign-up sheet for those who want to sign up to for my newsletter. So that's one way that I'll be reaching out at least a couple times a month at the minimum, maybe more. But in those newsletters, I'll be writing and highlighting different bills that we're working on, my thoughts on those bills, and And if there is any, if any of you ever have any questions relating to bills or if you have any concerns, feel free to reach out. There's numerous amounts of ways to get in touch, whether it's email, whether it's cell phone, whether it's all my social media platforms. There are those in District 21 that already have reached out, and I appreciate that. So if there's one thing that those that know me most, especially in my days when I was on City Council, I always pride myself on being accessible and easy to get a hold of. So feel free to always reach out. I never hide behind anything, and I'm more than willing to have conversations.
Yeah, I'll echo that as well, that we are actually very easy to get a hold of in the sense that all our contact info is very public. Our social media accounts are all out there. Definitely reach out to us anytime if you have questions, concerns about anything that you see coming up. Because we need the feedback. That's how we know, the people that we're representing. I'm also planning on doing an email newsletter, and yeah, you can sign up on my website, or just come chat with me, and happy to add you manually. It's pretty easy. So I'll be doing an email newsletter that'll start going out when we start voting. We haven't voted on much yet, so I haven't sent one out yet. But once we get a lot of bills going, that'll be going.
In terms of communication, I also have a newsletter that's going to be weekly. I hope to get the first one out tomorrow. That's my goal. You can sign up for that in the back, like Treg said. And then social media pages, you can hear from me. But it's also a two-way communication, right? And we'd love to hear from you. The best way to do that would be on the page, the legislature page. I think it's legislature.idaho.gov. You can look us all up. So my email address is on there. My phone number is on there, and I set it up so you can call or text on the phone number listed there if you want to get a hold of me and express your thoughts on things. So that's how I plan on operating this session.
Thank you again. In that same vein then, if I had an idea regarding a bill or a bill I would like to have you introduce, would you also use those same methods to, how would I contact you, or those processes be the same?
We'll start. Very similar processes. You have that one.
Here you can dual wield.
Yeah. That one doesn't want to work. Very similar processes. For me personally, email, I would like to read the idea, and if you have some thoughts or research or links or sources, I think email is the best way to express those. The other thing I forgot to mention is the Capitol is very open and accessible. You don't even have to go through security to get in there. And so you are welcome to come down and visit us anytime. The agendas, again, at legislature.idaho.gov, you can look at our committees. The agendas are always posted. Usually we aim for 24 hours in advance, so you can find the agendas. They're live streamed on the internet as well. If you can't make it down there, you can watch what we're doing. You can come watch us on the House floor. So we also try to make the Capitol very accessible for anybody that wants to come observe or to testify. You can testify online. You can sign up for that. You can testify via Zoom. You can testify in person. So if you want to get involved that way, we can get you more details on how to do that. But that's another effective way to get your voice heard at the State House.
What did Jeff say?
One thing I forgot also to mention is you can sign up for my newsletter on my website too, tregburn.com. Pretty creative. In the Senate, we have secretaries. Sorry, guys. So the formal name is an attaché. That's what they call themselves. So my attaché, his name is Tyler. And if you want to email me, my schedule goes through Tyler. He sets up all my appointments and he has access to my calendar. There's actually a gentleman that emailed me right before I came in that is interested in the Corvette license plates that were discontinued, and he wants to redo them. And so I'll be meeting with him next week to get that going. So that's one way that you can get a hold of me. That's a hair different than the House.
All right, thank you. I think I've softened you guys up a little bit now.
I knew it. I knew it.
All right. So a little bit harder. You all have education as a priority during your campaign. Are you working on supporting any bills towards that?
Great question. I'll go ahead and start it again. I haven't seen any bills. I've heard rumblings of bills, but I haven't read any bills. I've taken a step forward and I've learned a little bit about the difference between vouchers and ESAs, which are a hot topic right now. There's a big difference between the two. It's really important that the general public understand the difference between the two as well, because they're significantly different. They do different things. And so, honestly, I'm waiting to see that bill. I know that Senator Nichols in the Senate has a bill. I haven't seen that bill, so I can't speak intelligently about it yet. I'm waiting anxiously, just like each and every one of you are. So, yes, ma'am. I would probably be more for ESAs, just because that they're more broad in how they're used. Vouchers are specifically used for just tuition, whereas ESAs, education spending accounts, you can use those for tuition along with books or tutors or after-school programs. There's many different things that ESAs can be used for. So if the question is which one I would support first, it would be an ESA. Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Well, I'll start with the other thing first. I do actually have a couple education bills I'm working on. They are not related to the school choice issue. They're improvements to, one of them deals with the community college issue. The other one is an issue with public schools that I'm working on. The one unfortunate thing about doing this so early in the session is because they are still drafts, they're not public yet, I can't really talk about them, but I am very excited to be sharing them with you soon. They're both big time improvements, things that we need, things that we can do better. When it comes to the ESA voucher thing, I'm personally not a huge fan of giving money to private institutions, particularly tax dollars. There's a few reasons for that. For me, if the bill, and it's tough when we don't have a bill in front of us because, like Senator Brent mentioned, there are a lot of different ways that this has been proposed. But the frameworks that I've seen all involve some kind of dramatic expansion of government. Usually that means you have to create a bureaucracy to distribute payments. You're then having to pay for, right now in Idaho, there's 19,000 students that go to private schools. Multiply that times, say it's $8,000. It's a couple $100 million of tax increases that the state's going to have to do to then fund private education. And to me, that seems like an interesting step in a direction of expanding government. So, like I said, I don't have a bill in front of us, so it's hard to say without actually seeing what the bill is. Maybe there's a bill out there that would get me more interested, but without a framework that somehow gets around that problem, I struggle with that one. But I'll pass it off to Jeff.
Thank you. On the education in general, I guess I'll back up. We're at the legislative process is sort of like a funnel in my mind. Like at the top, it's really wide and there's a lot of broad ideas out here. And we're at that stage. This is week 2 of the session. And it kind of filters down, other ideas get weeded out and it gets smaller and smaller, then you get a bill and then you vote on it and hopefully the best ideas sort of make it through the funnel. So we're at the early stages of the funnel. There's a lot of broad ideas being tossed around out there, but nothing a lot of concrete. Now, how that relates to education, for me personally, I believe in, really both, where I think we can have strong public schools, and those work for a lot of people, and we have a constitutional duty to make sure we have provided education for the rising generation. I think that's really important. I also at the same time believe that parents play a central role in their child's education, and so they need to influence public policy. And so I'm really open to creative ideas around that and how to finance both. I'd probably lean more on the ESA side if we're trying to pick between two, but I'm really open to other creative ideas. I think it's something else in particular too. The governor and the state address propose a lot of ideas. So I think it's good to know we have an advocate to want to look at how we can help education in the governor's seat. I think that's important if we're going to get anything through and done. It's got to get past the governor. And then the other thing I would look at is also funding career technical education, or CTE is an abbreviation. Sometimes, you know, the traditional college route works great for a lot of people. Sometimes there's other career paths that work better. And there's a huge need for that also in Idaho. So looking at funding all of those options.
Thanks to all three of you. All right, this next question is directly for Senator Brent. You were recently in the newspaper talking about pro-life legislation and why you were against a certain bill. What would you need to see changed in order for you to support the legislation?
So that was an RS, that they called that a receipt slip. It was a vote in our State Affairs Committee as to whether or not it would get a hearing in that committee. So we haven't debated the bill yet, but just the nuts and bolts of it, the small amount that Senator Herndon presented to us, it would eliminate the there's 3 exemptions currently in the Treg law for abortion. All right, there is exemptions are rape, incest, and life of the mother. And his bill would take away the 2 exemptions of rape and incest. And I just honestly I don't think that that's reasonable. I have 2 daughters, and I can't imagine one of them getting raped by a relative and being impregnated and having to carry that baby full term, knowing that there's a decent chance that baby might not even be healthy. And the trauma that my daughter would go through is just something that I cannot support. I am pro-life. I have always been pro-life. I will continue to be pro-life. But we also have to be reasonable. And I believe that taking away those 2 exemptions from that bill is just an unreasonable ask to the women in the state of Idaho.
Okay, thank you. That's the end of the pre-submitted online questions. Thank you, everybody. We're going to switch over to Sydney Plum, and we're going to start going through more questions here. I just want to remind everybody, if you have questions, you have 3x5 cards. Make sure that you fill these out, and we'll get them up here. Thank you. With that, Sydney Plum, if you'd start with your first question.
Great, thank you. Thank you everyone for your submitted questions. We are going to go back to the education route for just a bit. So, to any one of you, considering none of you serve on an education committee, but the priorities are with education, what's the difference between the voucher and the education savings account, and how does that benefit Idaho students?
We all have different opinions on this one, I think. And again, it's tough to say that without actually seeing the pieces of legislation in front of you. Personally, I think there's not very much difference between a voucher and an ESA, at least from the systems that I've seen. For example, the system in Arizona that people talk about, it's not very different from the system in Indiana, where one calls it a voucher, one calls it an ESA. It's very similar. But again, I think we all have different opinions on this, so I'll let my colleagues share their thoughts.
I pretty much gave my opinion on ESAs versus vouchers. If the question is which, in my opinion, is better, I would say an ESA just because it has more options. But again, that's not me advocating for a certain bill or advocating for ESA or a voucher. I'm one that doesn't like to roam in the realm of hypotheticals. It's just, and I'm really excited to know what this bill looks like, as is the entire state. And so, excited to see what that looks like. I can't comment on more than that.
To get to what I think the question was, is a definition question. And so if you want to try to draw lines on what's what, the way I view it is vouchers are traditionally thought of as the money goes directly to an institution, an educational institution. So if your child chooses to go to school A or school B, the voucher, the money goes there. An education savings account, an ESA, is sort of like a health savings account where the money is put aside or directed particularly for this child, and then the parent can make the outflow for the approved expense. So it could be an educational institution. It's often broader than that. Some of the ideas being floated around are for school supplies or at-home learning, like computer expenses, since sometimes classes go remote or are required to be taken online. So the way I've seen it is education savings accounts tend to be broader in what they can be spent on, and some of the ideas, not always, but generally, they tend to roll over or last a little bit longer, whereas a voucher tends to be just directed that school year, directly to that school. So that I think.
They can be used for tuition as well.
And tuition as well, yes, correct. So that would be it.
So if I'm to understand it correctly, if we were homeschooling, then that would be an ESA?
Can you repeat your question so we can hear it online?
Ma'am, if you would put that on a three, that's okay. Our online audience can't hear anybody back here, and if you put it on 3x5 card, it'll come out over the mic, but we'll follow up with that. Just submit one. Thank you. If you have a follow-up to that, just submit another card to us, please. Thank you.
I would just add that the homeschooling question is still up for debate. Some bills involve homeschoolers, some do not. And a lot of the homeschooling community does not want to be involved in this.
You know, there's another thing that was proposed as well in the governor's budget, which is the continuation of the Empowering Parents Grant. That is at the homeschooling thing. It also gets us some of these alternative expenses, besides tuition. That's something that I think is pretty universally supported, and I think will almost certainly pass. That program's been very popular, very well received.
Great. Okay, so Representative Petzke, we'll stick with you. On our property tax bill, does the same amount of money go to charter schools as to other schools?
Great question. So the funding formula is incredibly complicated in the state. I know there's a bill coming forward to look at that because it is, you can take a full week-long course on the funding formula for the state of Idaho and you still would not understand it. It is so incredibly complicated. So hopefully at some point this year we have a solution to that. There is one major difference where charter schools actually get less money than public schools, and that is that they have no ability to bond for their facilities. So when a public school is started, you run a bond to build a facility. You then get an allocation from the state to pay for your teachers, to pay for your janitors and all your classified staff, your administrators, everything like that to run the school. Charter schools do not have the advantage of being able to run a bond early on, so they rely on a couple different things. It depends on the charter school. They either get donations or they just use that allocation that they get from the state on a per support level basis, and that gets to the funding formula that's overly complicated. They basically use some of that money to bond and build their facilities, so they actually end up having less money to run their operations because of that. So it heavily depends on the charter school. Also, a lot of the charter schools in the state are online, so they don't need facilities, and so they have obviously very different cost structures. So it's a tough question to answer because it's so complicated, and there are a lot of different ways in the state in which charter schools have been implemented. But hopefully that shed a little bit of light on that.
Thank you. We will go back to the topic of ESAs. Will it help all of Idaho students? And that could be for any of you. So will ESAs help all Idaho students?
How will I answer this? I don't know that the goal of people that are proposing those pieces of legislation is necessarily to help all of Idaho students. I think the argument for them is that it will increase competition, which will then lead to better public schools. Certainly, there's a lot of ways that we can improve public schools without that. I don't know what the solution is there. I think they certainly would provide the most benefit, and this is the problem that I have. They provide the most benefit for people who already go to private schools, who would then be receiving a check in the mail every year to pay for that tuition. Those are the people that would unquestionably benefit the most from it.
Maybe add a little bit more. That's a tough one to know because you could draft or create ESAs in a variety of ways. And some of the proposals would have like income limits or be targeted to maybe certain groups. Lower income is the first one that comes to mind. So I guess you could maybe say that doesn't cover everybody if you're targeting just a select group with those. But again, it could also be written in a very broad way to allow almost universal acceptance. So there's a variety of ways that can be implemented. I guess it depends on what specific program would be implemented.
Not sure that I have anything more to add to that. I do have one concern about, I guess I would say the answer to the question, probably not. I don't know if an ESA would benefit everyone in the state, but it would depend on the bill, to be honest with you. The one thing I do have a concern with, and it's more of my business mind that makes me think about this, is I think that the argument is that creating an ESA would create more of a competitive situation amongst all schools, and I would somewhat disagree with that. I think that it would create more competitive advantage with other ESAs or other private schools, to be completely honest with you, because the issue with public schools is that they don't have the mechanism to what's the word I'm looking for? It's very difficult for them to be competitive in this situation because of the school unions, all right? So they don't have a mechanism in which to get better, whereas the private sector would have all the wiggle room in the world to get better. And so I think that you might see more of a competitive advantage in the private sector versus the public sector, because the public sector is hamstrung with what they can do. For example, I don't think that I would ever, as a business owner, write out a check to one of my competitors so that our patrons can have a better shopping experience. It's just, it doesn't work that way. And so that's my first approach to it. It's an interesting way to, it's just a take, it's just a thought. This comes from me, and I'm really interested to see what the bills say, because a lot of what we're talking about is, you've heard of the cliche, the devil's in the details, and I think that that's the case in this bill as well. Sorry.
Great, thank you. Okay, we will throw you guys something a little bit more lighthearted. So you're all freshman legislators, yay, congratulations. What have the first few weeks been like, and what has surprised you the most?
It's unbelievable, honestly. I walk down the halls of the Capitol, and you see the pictures of past legislators on the wall, and you learn the history of what has happened in that building, and it's very surreal, and it's almost like I have to pinch myself. Because of the huge privilege it is to be able to represent reading nights and Idahoans. It's something I cannot describe, and it's just a huge honor. And I'm truly grateful for the opportunity to do it. That's probably the thing that really touched me the most is the mantle. That's what I would call it, the mantle that I feel. So that's something that I wasn't expecting, and you probably don't feel it or understand it unless you walk through the halls as often as we do. So it's just, I'm so lucky and so grateful. It's been a little slow, other than in state affairs in my committee, and that's a conversation for a different question. But it's been a little bit slow. You'll have a lot more questions for us in a couple of weeks, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's been crazy busy for me, actually. I feel like I've been going nonstop, pretty much since the start. It's been a ton of fun. It's been a tremendous honor. I can't thank the voters enough. It has been crazy busy, absolutely crazy busy, and because of JFAC, working tons of budgets, it's a lot, but it's a good thing. It needs to get done. I geek out on numbers. Actually, we all kind of geek out on numbers. We're all a good group for that. So it's been a ton of fun and a tremendous honor to serve so far. And I'm excited to get into the real meat of it, honestly, because like Treg said, it has been slow on the policy side. There are not yet a lot of bills, but we know they're coming. We're starting to finally see some RSs get introduced, and we know some big exciting things are coming, so definitely excited to speed it up even more.
Yes, it's a real humbling honor and privilege to serve at the Capitol, and I'm really grateful for that. It's been an exciting time. To describe what it's like, it's a lot. I think it's like just being thrown in the deep end, and you have to swim. But I'm grateful for it. One of the most surprising things, as we mentioned, is just the slowness to start. But I've been reminded, honestly, this is intentional. The founders developed a system where it wasn't easy just to come in there and make a change, right? That's how our Constitution is set up. We have division of powers, we have a process for the public to be involved, and so it's intentionally that way, which I'm grateful for. One of the most surprising things that I really enjoy and appreciate about the state of Idaho and the House of Representatives is that every time we're on the floor, we start with the prayer and the pledge.
So awesome.
And to me, I think that just puts our heart and our minds in the right space to acknowledge God and remember really why we're here, what they're doing this for. And so to have that moment of reset every day, I think is a great thing that we do in the state of Idaho.
Completely agree.
Great. We will stick with you, Representative Ehlers. The term JFAC has been thrown around quite a bit. Can you explain the purpose of a joint committee?
Yes, I'll take Representative Petzke's question. Thank
I
you.
know where this question is going, too, if you want me to go.
No, I'll jump in. Okay, so JFAC is an acronym, Joint Finance Appropriations Committee. The J is the joint part. Joint means the House and the Senate get together and jointly meet as a committee to discuss appropriations. So finance appropriations. Appropriations is spending the money. So I sit on the tax and revenue, the revenue and tax policy. So that's taxes. We decide what's coming into the state, how much taxes. James on the JFAC committee, the appropriations committee, sends what goes out the door. Who gets to spend what? So tax decides what comes in, appropriations decide what comes out. The beauty of it having being a joint committee, a lot of other states do it backwards, or even Congress, and you run into problems. So you get the House side and other states or Congress that wants to spend money this way. You get the Senate side that wants to spend money this way. They both pass their bills, and then they get together jointly and try to hash it out. We do it on the front end. We say, beginning, House and Senate work together to figure out what the spending should look like, what the appropriation should be, and then it tends to go more smoothly through the process. You can just watch Congress and see what's going on there. So in Idaho, this is a system that seems to work really well. And one other thing I'll just add to that is we also, in Idaho, we are good fiscal stewards and must have a balanced budget. So we can't spend what we don't take in. And so that's another important part of what that committee does working together.
I'm guessing there's a part B to this question because I've been asked it about 60 times a day for the last couple of weeks, and that is on the question of if the vote is going to be split.
You're not getting bugged, are you, about this?
Not at all. Is it in the list? I bet it's in the list. If it's not, I'm sure it's coming. The answer to that question is I do not know. That is a decision for leadership. Leadership will make that call at some point. Personally, I don't understand why people are so upset about it. It's not going, I can promise you, it's not going to make a tremendous difference either way because it's still the same people casting the same votes who then have to go to the floor of the respective bodies and make their cases. I honestly don't know if it did somehow come to JPAC as a vote. I'm not sure which way I would vote on it. There's a lot of reasons to do it either way. I do not think it will make a tremendous difference. From what I've seen, it's mostly the Democrats that are mad about it, and they're mad about JPAC for other reasons as well. So that's a topic for another day.
Maybe explain what that is, because I don't think a lot of
Explain
what the vote, why this is an issue.
You're right. You're right. So JPAC historically has voted together as a block. The Senate and House members vote together, so you need 11 votes to advance the budget. There is talks of splitting it so that the House and Senate vote separately, so you need 6 on each to move the budget on to the greater bodies.
There's 10 members per vote.
And there's 10 members per body.
Thank you for that clarification. Senator Brent, we've had several questions come in about term limits. Would you explain your perspective on them?
I want to learn more about it. I sat down with a gentleman yesterday or the day before that came in my office and wanted to talk to me about an Article 5 convention for a balanced budget. And I believe there are 20-something states that have already signed on. There needs to be 34 states to sign on before an Article 5 convention is convened. And so it's intriguing, because an interesting fact, this is what he told me. Think about this. He said, as it relates to the balanced budget, and I don't know if this is true, this is a lobbyist and a legislative advisor, so fact check. I haven't had time to fact check, but he told me that back in the day when Ronald Reagan was president, this passed the House, and it was one vote short from passing the Senate. Now imagine, and the reason why it did not pass the Senate is because we were approaching at that time a $1 trillion debt situation. Now imagine this. Imagine if back in the day, all right, if that Senate, if we did 2 more votes, we would have a law in place right now that the federal government would be forced to, by law, to balance their budget. That's pretty interesting. Really, really interesting. So, the concern is the runaway convention. And I don't know enough about that. I want to be educated more about that because that's what most people's concerns are as it relates to the Article 5 convention. As it relates to term limits, I would need to learn more about that. And I would need to learn more about the runaway convention because that seems to be everyone's concern. But that's a great question. I thought my conversation with the gentleman yesterday was really interesting. I learned a lot.
Thank you. Okay, so we are getting short on time, so this next round is going to be a fast round. So each of you will only have 1 minute max to talk about each topic. So, first topic, grocery tax.
My gut reaction is to repeal it. That's my gut reaction. I think that would be a smart conversation to have. I also want to see what that looks like compared to what the current tax credit looks like for groceries. But my first gut reaction would be to repeal it.
Yeah, it's certainly a regressive tax. I understand why it's there. It's ironic that the people who want to repeal the grocery tax also tend to be people that say that they want to have sales tax be the only tax, because the reality is the more exemptions you add to the sales tax, the harder it is to make that the only tax. With that said, it is clearly a very in-demand thing. If I were to choose between the different tax priorities, it's probably not my number one. Property taxes, we already talked about that. That's probably my number one, but I don't know. We'll see what gets through the tax committee, Jeff. Any insight on what gets through the tax committee this year?
Yeah, that's one that's being looked at and talked about. Nobody's brought forth the proposal on how to do that. It's certainly something to consider, especially food prices. You've gone to the grocery store lately, like there's a lot of increases there. One thing just to consider if you just run the numbers.
Who's done the numbers?
I do have a spreadsheet with numbers, but on this.
No.
Valerie doesn't want to see a spreadsheet. Yeah, you just have to watch that it doesn't turn into a tax increase for all of us by repealing the grocery tax. And there's some interesting numbers on that. There's the speed round for you.
Thank you. Okay, let's talk about bonds for school construction. Starting with Representative Ehlers.
Just
Speed round.
James Bond.
I'm going to clarify. The original question that came in was, what's an alternative to having bonds fund school construction?
Okay, alternatives.
Still 1 minute each,
Okay.
please.
One of the bigger ideas I've heard about is taking a pool of money. You remember the special session that happened last year? There was a lot of money allocated to education that we need to figure out how to spend. One of the ideas is to use that to pay off bonds and levies within the school district. And so then your property taxes will go down because you're not paying on those bonds and levies anymore on your property tax, taking that money. One of the arguments against it is it unfair to the fiscal school, the schools that were fiscally stewards and didn't have bonds. So there's probably going to have to be some of that money in fairness to go to those schools also that can spend it on general operations. So that's the big idea being talked about right now.
Yeah, there's a ton of different proposals out there. There's impact fees and developers. That's something that we've talked about certainly in the past. It's very interesting. The reality with that one is it's not a silver bullet, and if you cannot raise enough money, it's a very small amount of money that you can raise with impact fees and developers to actually build schools. I'm certainly not opposed to it. I certainly think that could be a good thing, but you have to do something else as well. I think the ideas that are being floated are good ideas to use some of that money that was set aside to pay down school bonds and find other ways of doing school construction.
Along with these examples that have been given, I've heard that there's also a proposal that's being talked about amongst legislators to create a fund where different school districts can borrow against that at a lower rate as opposed to bonding at a higher rate. I mean, I don't know how much traction it has, but it's just something that I've heard.
Our last speed round topic will be, what are your perspectives on access to sex education in public schools?
Interesting question. You know, as a parent, I have not control over that myself. I've had the birds and the bees talks with all three of my children, one-on-one. I would appreciate allowing the parents to have those conversations with the kids. That's just my first thought. I wasn't prepared for that question, but that's just my first thought.
Yeah, I'm the person up here that's not a parent, so I probably have the least perspective to add on this one, but I do agree with Treg that parents should be involved. I don't know if there's any legislation coming forward on that topic this year. I haven't heard any rumblings, but maybe there is.
As a parent, certainly I want parental to be the central role in that public policy. I think one of the best ways to do that, though, is at your local school board. A lot of those curriculum decisions and you can have such an impact there are being made at that level. And so that's a concern. Definitely get involved with the school board. And if you see anything, I don't think parents want crazy things taught in the schools. And so, if you hear something, see something, say something, right? And let's look into it.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. All curriculum in the state of Idaho is set at the local level. The state does not set curriculum, so that is definitely a local issue.
Thank you. We will move to our follow-up. Does anyone have anything else to say about ESAs?
I think we covered that one.
I've got
This
something.
looks like
Good job.
Really?
It's only like the fourth question on it.
I'm really interested to see
Yeah,
what this
what's
is gonna
left?
be.
Okay. I just wanted to answer this a little more broadly so you can get my perspective on education. And I want to take a step back from this. And I want to view it as what is important is the education of our children. And we're talking about means to an end to educate our children. And so I want to look at outcomes, right? What is giving us the best outcomes for educating our children? And, public schools have a pretty strong track record, charter schools, there's other things that have strong track records. And so for me, we're discussing a lot of means to an end in terms of ESAs and others. And so I want to look at education as what's best for the child and what's getting them the best outcomes.
Yeah, the charter school thing actually reminded me we should hit on that. I feel like I've made my opinions on ESAs clear for now, but the charter school thing is super interesting and very effective so far in the state. Some of the highest performing schools in the state are charter schools, so it's certainly a model that I think we should continue to expand. I would say that I'm a huge fan of school choice in the sense of parents should be able to choose where to send their kids for school, and we should have a large array of options in that sense.
It's good. Yeah.
Okay, that's perfect timing. So we are down to 7 o'clock, and that is concluding our town hall. I know that not all the questions got asked, and so I hope you join us again. We should be having another town hall in the near future. But I do want to thank the audience. For you to take the time on Friday evening to come out and be engaged with government is a privilege that we have in this country and our state. And I am really grateful for you, the legislators, our moderators, our volunteers, and to the Meridian City Council, City Hall, and staff who helped make this possible. I do want to remind all of you as well, some of these questions sound quite complicated. If you need help making an appointment to talk more with your legislators, please contact me or one of the legislators out in the foyer, and that concludes our town hall. Thank you so much. I appreciate all of you.